What's up, guys? This is the Founder Hour podcast. I'm your co-host, Pat.
And I'm Posh.
And we're sitting here with Ashley Merrill. Ashley, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we kind of get this thing going, why don't we kind of talk a little bit about how we even heard about Lunya? We had your husband, Mark, on the show not too long ago.
Yeah.
When was that? It was like
It's been a long time ago now, yeah.
Yeah, episode. It's in the 30s. Yeah, we're in the. We just passed episode 100, so it was like episode 30 or 40.
Something like
those.
That. Yeah, 41, maybe 31, something like that.
Yeah. So, and I think if I'm not mistaken, he's like top 5 of our podcast, like download wise. So,
are you trying to set the bar high for me, or what's happening right now?
You got to beat him.
We got to beat him.
Actually, he's top 3.
Is he?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You got to beat him.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yeah. People love Riot Games.
It is a pretty cool company.
Yeah. It was pretty rad when we went there. So yeah, and we I think we posted on Reddit and it just went like nuts.
That makes sense.
That's
I think
people were just
the
like
the core Riot fans
Yeah.
are definitely going to be on Reddit.
Yeah, and it's funny. My girlfriend's favorite part of that episode was when he mentioned Lunya.
Yeah.
Like she did not care about Riot Games.
We have somewhat polarizing appeal
Yeah,
in that way.
yeah,
so,
which is good.
Yes, I don't think anybody that works at Lunya is familiar with Riot. So
Yeah, that's
Nice.
good. That's
Yes.
good. Yeah, she was super excited. She's like, "Oh, I love Lunya. I love their stuff. You guys got to get her on."
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
So I'm glad we finally made it work out, and I know it's tough. So we're excited to be here. So
Yeah. So why don't we start things off with where were you born? What was your childhood like? What was young Ashley like?
Wow, we're going to go deep.
we're getting real deep on this
We're going
podcast.
back.
All right. Young Ashley. So I'm from LA. Mark and I are both LA natives,
Yeah.
which is like makes us.
did you go to
unicorns.
USC as well?
No, I went to the smart school in town, UCLA.
USC Business School.
Extension.
Yeah,
USC Law School. Yeah.
Mark and I have a really fun rivalry around this one.
The house divided.
It's exactly right. We're both from here, but early on I was actually an equestrian, so I rode horses.
Oh, nice.
I did this kind of obscure kind of horseback riding called dressage, which was like it's from military riding. So kind of funny. I'm sort of an OCD person though, so it actually makes a lot of sense with my personality type. Did that for years, was very competitive in that all throughout elementary and high school.
How did you get into that?
Isn't that funny? It's so random. Basically, I lived in a neighborhood where everybody had horses, and so I got really into horses. Was so obsessed with it. Started riding more competitively, and then jumping was what most people would get into. But my dad had said a strict no on jumping, and so it kind of like pushed me into this other path.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a good fit for my personality because it's all about precision and practicing until you like get something right. And so it was really fun. And I think it also just kept me distracted and out of a lot of the things that could have sent me off track through high school and all that. But yeah.
So did you like think that you would do that professionally, or was it kind of just more of like a hobby and you knew?
It was more of a hobby. I knew that there was going to be a moment at the end of high school where I could decide: am I going to try to go the Olympics route, or am I going to kind of move on? And the downside scenario in the Olympics route was not a really appealing one, and so I was like, it's just not worth it. Like the life that I could have is just pretty specific, and beyond that, it's not a lot. So it became something though that was a hobby, something I was passionate about. I loved horses. It certainly helped me get into college, so it really was a great thing. I thought I was going to be a lawyer, and that was because Ally McBeal was super popular when I was like middle school, high school age, and it looked rad.
Right.
I was like, oh, she's super cool, smart, like a badass, basically. I want to be a lawyer. And so that was actually what kept me academically on track.
Gotcha.
And I thought all the way through college that was what I wanted to be. And then finally, when I got to the end of college, I realized maybe I should like talk to a lawyer.
Yeah.
And just like make sure that
Just
this
in
is the
case,
right.
I'm not a fan of what the day-to-day is like.
And it was a good thing because when I talked to her, and I was like, this job isn't quite like it was depicted on Ally McBeal. And so I realized that probably wasn't the path for me.
I think that's great advice. And I went to law school actually, and I'd never practiced.
He talked to a lawyer
I did
before.
talk to lawyers, and I just at the end of it, when I got
Talk to
in,
the
and I
wrong
was
ones.
like, I don't know if this is something I want to do day to day.
Yeah.
But I think that's great advice for folks that are listening, or just like the millennial generation.
Yeah.
Is a lot of things look great on TV,
Totally.
in film. Whether it's being a film or even being an entrepreneur, I think is something that's so it's like sexy these days. Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I get to work for myself. I'm gonna make my own money. It's probably even more difficult than going down a career path of being a lawyer or doctor because there is no blueprint.
I say this to people all the time, that I think that there's actually there's a trap of it looking really sexy right now.
Right.
And I do think there's an allure to going, oh, I'm going to work for myself. But the reality is most people who start a business don't work for themselves beyond the first year or so, because they raise money and they actually work for the money.
So or the customers.
Right? So you're still reporting to people. And now that there's no line between your life and your business, because it's like it's all consuming. So I always tell people, it's like there's a concept. I know I'm getting like off track here, but there's a concept called ikigai, which is one of
What is it called again?
Ikigai. Okay. It's a Japanese word, and it's this idea of picking what you want to do in life, not based on Ally McBeal or that what you think you should do, but figuring out what it is that you're good at, what is it that you love, what does the world need, and what can you get paid for, and that you try to basically pick a career that's the intersection of those things. And I think that you can get to such a better outcome with that kind of framework versus this ladder where like, oh, I need this title and this, because oftentimes people are not well suited to that job, or they just think they want it because they saw somebody else had it. But when you really unpack what they're good at, what they like to do, it's actually a mismatch.
Actually, just to take that one step further, I mean, I love that concept, and I can't wait to read more about it after.
Me too.
And and the problem I think for me is in those 4 things you just mentioned is the how to make money on it, or how to make money from it, or doing that thing. I feel like it's easier said than done, right?
Sure.
I think I have figured out the other 3 personally, but the 4th one of like, how do you make money on it?
Right.
What can people do to even start thinking about that, or like researching it, or I don't know what it is, but how do you get to the answer?
Well, I think and I don't have the answer to this, right? But like I'm going to use this company as an example.
Perfect.
So one of the things
this
that
company
happened,
being Lunya.
Yes, right. Sorry. I'm going to use Lunya as an example. So I have a lot of people that come in here as entry-level folks, and I ask them, what do you want to do? And that's like a perplexing question for people. They're like, I don't know. What am I supposed to? I don't know. I want to be a CEO or a CMO, or they'd say some big title that's like what they think they're supposed to want to be, or I want to be in marketing. They don't even really know what marketing means, but everybody comes in. Oh, I'm going to be in marketing. We do here. We call them shadow days, but basically anyone who's below a director level can shadow once a quarter anybody in the organization. And the idea is to sit next to somebody who's doing something that maybe you know nothing about, and to figure out what the job really is, talk to that person about what they like, and get a sense of like what the day-to-day is like. I also think one of the things I suggest then to people is broad exposure, because I think that we all hear about a certain handful of jobs. But what you don't realize is, I got a company here of 45 people, and not one of them has the same job title, So there's a lot of people here doing a lot of really different things that I had never heard of before I started being in this industry.
I love that concept of exposure. He knows.
It's
just like because it's like if you're not exposed to certain things, then how do you really know like what your passion is? Like there might be something out there that is perfect for you.
Yes.
Because now, like when you're exposed to it, you can look back and be like, wow, actually, I think I might be good at that because I like this, I like that, and I feel like my skills complement that really well.
Yes.
And so both of your points, I think the biggest challenge is once you get past college or grad school, there aren't those opportunities unless it's a job.
I agree. Well,
so unless we come up with a company where folks that are working professionals also get to shadow other people in other industries, perhaps that's an idea that has legs.
I think one thing I did before I worked here in my first job, so after college, I went to culinary school for 6 months.
Love it.
I sort of backed my parents into a funny spot where they were like, we're going to pay for 4 years of school. And
so this is post the schools that shall not be named.
Post-college, yes, exactly. That
Amazing.
Post-superior Los Angeles institution, correct?
I don't know if Stanford was here.
Los Angeles. So then, amazing. But after graduating, my parents had said 4 years, so I graduated early and stuck the culinary school in there, and so I kind of worked that one out.
Yeah, nice loophole there.
I'm like, you weren't specific, and now you're going to pay the price.
You just had what it took to be a lawyer.
That's right. See, you can see why I thought that might have lined up for me. So basically, I wanted to work at venture capital after because I thought, I actually love deals. That's what I think I had loved about the legal ideas. Like, I love the negotiation. I love deals. I like understanding it, transactions. I love entrepreneurs. I like change makers and just being around them. And I was like, this is super cool. And if you think about my I was a art history and English double major with a culinary school background. I was clearly the most perfect hire for a venture capital job. So then I offered to work for free, and I worked after school. So
at a venture capital firm?
At a venture capital firm. So I did whatever their most crap entry level position was, and I just said, I'm going to work for free for 3 months, and if after it you don't want to hire me, then you don't have to hire me, you know? And luckily they wanted to hire me. But I do advise that to people. So I think there's something to and it's not going to be convenient, you know? Like I did it after I went to school for a full day. I then drove and did that job. But I think that's the thing, is like you have to be, you have to drive your own destiny, you know?
It sounds like you had a lot of interests.
When I'm saying it, I'm realizing it sounds like I'm
which
just
is common.
like,
Which is common for a lot of
I'm
folks.
glad you're saying this because everybody not everybody, but a lot of people we've interviewed are like, oh, we love this, we did this, and now we're here.
Here we are.
But it's like, it's never that way.
No, didn't feel that way for me.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So I guess I'm just wondering kind of where, like, did you even have like a narrow focus of like what you, like, I know you said you wanted to go into venture capital. Why was that? When did you even kind of come across that thing where you're like, I like deal making? Like what, growing up, was there anyone in your family who was in venture capital or around you, or how did that come about?
It wasn't the funding piece of it. I just liked there's something about people that see challenge as opportunity that really appeals to me. And that's inherent in people that are starting businesses. The odds are against you, right? You're doing something that has never been done before. It's going to be super hard. It's like you're around people that believe that they can. Right. Whatever it is they're trying to do, they believe they can. And that's really awesome to be around. Yeah. And I think that my dad is someone who's very much like that. He was a dentist, but my dad can build cars. He's like driven, he's driven race cars, builds cars. He can fly airplanes. He can do like all sorts of crazy things, build homes. Like he's just, and I think it's just because he believed he could. Yeah. And so I think I was attracted to that. And so that really, I think for me was a big driver. When I was younger, we lived near a creek, and I used to organize the rocks in the creek in a straight line. Remember that OCD thing I was telling you about? Yeah. But when I found superior rocks, I would sell them on the side of the road. And you can imagine I had like a booming business. Yeah. Everybody wants to buy a rock. But I think that there was something about, like, I liked that process of like finding something of value and kind of making a business of it.
Yeah. And was there ever a moment in your life where because you had so many like different passions or interests, if you will, that you weren't sure kind of like where you would end up or what you would do? Because I feel like that's pretty common
all the time,
just in general.
I remember, so my path, if you were to just go like, what's the high level resume, was from, I went to UCLA art history and English. Then I went to culinary school.
Did you finish culinary school?
I did. I did. So I went to culinary school. It was only a 6-month program though, not the longer ones. Then I went to venture capital. Then I worked at an online media company where I did M&A and BD for them. And I remember talking to actually my dad again. I was chatting with him and I said, I don't know what to do next. I got to be an entrepreneur at that online media company and build this site called Momtastic within the organization. It was amazing, but I was like, what do I do next? I don't have a good business idea, and I'm lacking like technical skills to do a lot of certain things that I have competency in. What do I do? And he said to me, and I thought this was so great, he's like, Ashley, your life is built of tangents. Everybody's life is. And ultimately, you don't know where they're headed, but they're all connected. And what they're doing is shaping you into a person that has a certain set of experience and skill set that is going to be very right for something.
Yeah, and that's never been seen before. Everyone's life is different.
And it's right.
I'm laughing because it's just genius.
It was so helpful. Because I thought, Dad, I'm going to be in an interview and how am I going to explain this path? And he's like, if it's the right job, if it's the right situation, the path's going to make sense. Right. Or you're going to be able to speak to it, and the person's going to understand your brain and why you're in this way. And I look at it and I swear it's so true. Like Momtastic taught me how to build a brand and how to acquire audience, and it taught me how to overcome not knowing how to do things. And I think culinary school and art history taught me a lot about creativity, and it's just like, and for I know for Mark, like his sports and a lot of that taught him teamwork. And so it's like if you were to put it all together, you don't understand why it works, but it works.
And I think the biggest worry comes from, I mean, since the age-old, debate of specialist versus generalist, right? And being a jack of all trades and being good at a lot of things and knowing a little bit about a lot of things, but not having like a deep expertise in one thing. And I think that a lot of people who have a lot of interest would prefer to be a jack of all trades because it's like, I can't just focus on one thing and block out everything else. But that's where the worry comes from, is like, am I hireable, or is anyone going to like pay me for a service that I don't know, like have a deep knowledge in. So
this is where that Ikigai exercise is really useful. It's literally circles that overlap and you fill it out.
I'm doing this tonight.
It's like a double Venn diagram.
Yeah, it's exactly. And it's a great place to start because you're not starting from a place of titles or of the job you want. You're starting from who you are and what actually like motivates you in the world, And for me, actually, what was in the center box was creative challenge. And when I saw it in there, I was like, of course, that's what I like. That's probably why I shouldn't run a big company, actually, because what I like is breaking things. So when this company will likely outgrow me, because that's not a great plan for getting to be, if you're going to get from a 50 million revenue company to a 200 million company, what you need to get there is probably process and people and systems.
Orders.
Right, which is probably not right for someone who likes to break things.
Yeah.
So realizing that, at what point did you realize that creative challenge is what was driving you? When did you do that exercise?
I did that exercise like 6 months ago.
Oh, this is like recent.
It's recent. And that's where now I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so it was like, I looked at it and I went, oh, this makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So going back, sorry to cut you off, but going back, like even with that advice that you got, like, would you change anything about your trajectory of like whatever you did, like whatever your major was in college, what you ended up doing after?
No. And I think that's sort of like that one of those questions that most people always say they don't, because you don't know what the cost would be of those changes, and I'm happy with where I'm at. I will say, and I say this as like, a woman who's trying to balance the kids and the work thing, that I did it all at the same time. I literally started my business, went to business school, and had kids at the same time. And my husband was running a business, like a big exploding business at the same time. I don't recommend that to anybody. Yeah. And it's like, it's not something that I feel like people they're like, wow, that's so impressive. And I'm like, I don't even think we should celebrate it, because what it means is that I didn't get to enjoy any of those things very much. I felt, this is where I think the Ikigai exercise is important, because you get to the integrity of what experience is positive for you. And I just think like what that meant was, there was a little something that was taken away from all those things. And so for me, my one takeaway would be, if I could be sure I would have the same outcome, I would definitely not do it all on top of each other.
You brought up an interesting point, and I hate when people that are podcasters or journalists or whatever, especially males, that ask females like, how do you balance being a mother and like an entrepreneur? Yeah. I mean, I hate it. I do hate it. But I mean, knowing Mark and knowing the company that he's built, knowing you and the company you built, I mean, how the hell did you do it? Like, seriously, like you went to business school, you went to grad school after, right?
I did. I went to grad school, yeah. And I was in grad school while doing the business while having both kids. So that was not good.
When did you meet Mark, by the way?
I met Mark, when I was 19. I'm 35 now. We've been married this November, it'll be 10 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. So we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
He actually moved into my very grungy one-bedroom apartment when he started his business. So we were together before it, and then at like sort of 8 months, he moved in because he didn't have a job anymore, didn't have any more income. And then I did the books at his business on my lunch hour. So I would go over there and
Did you guys ever have this plan? I mean, did you guys ever sit down and like seriously, like, you don't have to be humble if you did, but did you ever think that this is where, and I'm sure there's going to be more than just this, you guys are so young, but was there ever a plan that was like discussed or strategized, or like just even like, oh yeah, like maybe that'll happen in our wildest dreams?
You know what I knew is that Mark was ambitious and I was ambitious. And so I think I felt like comfortable that we would have like a reasonable lifestyle. I assumed we'd both be professionals. I think I sort of like foresaw that. I certainly could never have forecasted where things ended up. Right. But what we did talk about prior to getting married is both Mark and I were raised in a more traditional home structure where the moms, for the most of our upbringing, stayed home and helped raise us, and our dads were primary breadwinners. And I did look to him and I said, that's not going to be how that's not what I'm signing up for. And you have to be okay with that. And I don't even think we both knew the weight of that agreement that we had made at that time. And I feel really happy that we had that conversation, because when kids came, things got so hard. And I think if I hadn't been clear about it, then he could have been like, oh my gosh, this wasn't what I thought. Yeah, right. You're not supporting me and you're not doing these things. But I was like, remember, I said this from the beginning. And so for 6 years, I was much more in a support role. And then at 6 years, I said, okay, like your business is big enough. You've got a lot of team now. I'm going to have a kid. If I don't start this now, I might never do it. And so now's my turn. And we felt what we felt was a good idea. And that was a together decision.
So you went to business school, started Lunya, and had a kid at the same time?
All at the same time. Actually, I started business school September 2012, early September 2012. I found out I was pregnant late September 2012. Wow. And I started Lunya in October of that same year. It was, like I said, it's one of those things where you go like, wow, and I feel wow looking back at it. But I'm like, it came at a cost to our marriage. It came at a cost to our happiness. Right. And we're still trying to rebuild what that did to our marriage. I'm just like being real honest about it. So I say that because I'm always scared that I never want to give like an unrealistic portrayal. Right, and then people go, oh, this is the new standard. This is what I should do. And I'm like, to me.
The perfect couple.
Yeah, it's like, it's almost like what happened is I think I miss some of the things that really mattered.
Right.
And I think Mark too is like, I don't know, we sacrificed a lot for probably too long.
And it's funny, Alexis Ohanian, who I love following, who founded Reddit, and he's now a venture capitalist, and he talks a lot about this like hustle porn, and now that he's a father, he's like very into the whole like being a father, like being a parent. And I think that him and Serena both like started later in life in terms of being parents. Yeah. But I also think that being a full-time parent, that also comes at a cost for your business.
Of course.
So it's like, which one do you pick? Like, there is no good choice. It's almost like a personal decision that you have to make. And it's, I mean, I haven't been to that point yet, but I feel like it's just so difficult.
It's hard because I also, the way I think about it is I look at life as this pie graph, and I think about it like it's the whole life is a pie graph, not this moment, not the next 5 years. So when I think about what I want in that pie graph, there's a lot of things I want in it, right? I want family, I want fun, I want business, like success. I want all these things, but I also have to acknowledge that those all won't happen at the same time.
Right.
And so if you look at my life right now, it feels pretty two-note. Basically, it's kids and work. And so there's not a lot of time for fun and frivolous and spontaneous and art and things that I also care about. But I do think that's I got to get my mind right about that. Yeah. And I also think that like I'm going hard with the expectation that I won't be going forever. It's just like, so I think that's the other thing is you could also look at life completely differently and go, I want a job that's great for the lifestyle I want, knowing that I might be doing it forever. Yeah. If I was going at this pace forever, I would definitely die early.
Yeah.
Like, it's no
but for someone who is ambitious, how do you talk about happiness? Like, how do you define that, or how do you try to define that for yourself? Like, what is the ideal scenario when you have kids to take care of, you have a family, you have a business? At the time you're in school, you're not anymore, but you want to be able to try to balance it out. Mm-hmm. How at what point do you feel like you get closer and closer to like the optimal happiness point?
I feel like if I stay true to my values and the things that I say are important. And so for me, Lunya is more than just a company that sells sleepwear. We are we're a women-led company, which I feel like is getting a little cliche at this point, but it's like we have an opportunity to be an example of what a great company can be. Right. And I think that everybody that's here feels like they're a part of that. And there's a handful of companies that are run by women that have actually reached any real size. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's important to be be the change is my personal quote, my personal quote, my personal motto. Yeah. I'm stealing that from somebody else for sure.
Gandhi, I think.
Yeah, probably. Someone with way more eloquence than me. Yeah. But I loved it, and I heard it, and I was like, yes. And I think so for me, there's a mission about being here and about being involved with this that drives me. Mm-hmm. And so when I feel like I'm living into the person I say I want to be, a good wife, a good parent, a good friend, somebody who it leads an aspirational business, that feels good. That makes me feel satisfied.
And speaking of Lunia, I'm trying to remember, and I probably don't remember everything, but when Mark mentioned it, he said that the idea was born literally, I think, again, this could be a very wrong story.
It's okay.
But you were looking in the mirror or something, and you're like, there needs to be like better sleepwear.
Totally. That's
Okay.
exactly the
Amazing.
story. I was wearing like Mark's old, I can't remember, there was his
that's what it was.
frat shirt or his like, or some weird
Some
like
beautiful
kind of,
USC shirt, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't a frat, so definitely if it was out of the shore, it was like a frat shirt. Or a or something like Star Wars. I can't remember which one it was.
Okay,
But it was
yeah.
I had a rotation between those two outfits. And usually there was some kind of hole because that was
Right.
the reason it was discarded from
Right.
his drawer and made it into mine. And then I would be wearing his boxer briefs, which I'd wear rolled up.
Yeah.
And that was my nighttime outfit. I was bringing sexy into the bedroom is what I'm trying to tell you. Yeah.
So that's when, I mean, like, so what was the idea?
And what were you doing at the time? Because I know you did the online media thing. Were you there at the time?
Yeah.
Like
Well, so what's funny is, so I was working in that online media company. I got to build Momtastic from the inside, and it was that cool entrepreneurial experience. And then I kind of got to a place with that company, or Mark's company was doing really well. And I thought, what is it that I want to do? And while I enjoyed that job I kind of checked the box on that experience. And I thought, I'd like to be part of building something. And it needs to be meaningful because, I mean, just candidly, as his company did well, my salary was less and less relevant, you know? And so I thought it can't just be money that gets me out of bed in the morning. Granted, I want to make money because it's like, that's how I know that the business is sustainable and working, but it had to be more. And so, I realized that I had to have like this deep purpose around creating it and whatnot. So for me, I didn't know what the answer was. I had had that experience wearing those old clothes, like quite a while before I did it. Then I found a lot of reasons why not to launch the company. I thought, what do I know about making clothes? Like I'm scared, like all that, this isn't a good time. Like I could list off reasons, right?
Yeah.
And so there was a gap in time between actually when I ended my job and I knew I was going to business school. I had gotten in, there was like.
So that was the plan before
That was the plan. Yeah.
You
I
went
was
to Anderson, right?
I went to Anderson. And so I was like, I had, I don't remember exactly how much time, but I had some time in between. We had moved, so I was like, cool, I'm going to move into this new thing. And I still was like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah. But did you want to be an entrepreneur? Was that the plan, or like?
I wanted to be a part of something that was meaningful. It didn't have to be my own thing.
So what were you going to business school for? What function?
Maybe to find a partner or someone else that was doing a business that maybe I could join. I felt like no matter what I did, I wanted to be somebody that could be a part of building something, and I needed to gain skills that would be valuable in doing that. I guess I kind of look at that very strategically. I was like, if I want to do this, I need to become valuable in this way.
Gotcha.
My husband would tell you that was how I looked at culinary school too. I was like, if I want to secure a good, guy, I got my culinary school background and we're ready to go. What do they say? Like the way is through the stomach or something,
Yeah, definitely.
For sure, Mark, he eats so much. So it's like, it's totally his love language.
Definitely a thing.
Yes. But so I was like, I got to get these skills. And so I went to business school thinking, okay, this is like, I'm going to meet a person who's got an idea and I'm just going to like join the team and that's going to be great. What happened though is I got pregnant. And when I got pregnant, I thought that idea started haunting me about the sleepwear. And I was like, man, it's not a bad idea. It's actually like a really good idea. And the precedent totally exists. Like Lululemon and what they did for athletic wear, which was like almost 20 years earlier, was exactly the same. People wearing a substitute product. And frankly, your athletic wear is almost less important because you wear it for 45 minutes, an hour a day. This is the clothing that you're going to wear around all the people you care about most for 50% of your life. And how are you showing up in that way? And I was not showing up as my best self. So I thought, man, if I could help people be confident and comfortable in the most intimate time of their day, like that'd be incredible. So anyway, when I got pregnant, I realized I had an opportunity to do it and that the only thing holding me back was fear. And I thought, actually, it would be worse to tell my kids that I didn't do it because I was afraid than to do it and to fail. And so weirdly, my kids, which is, by the way, the thing I always assumed was going to get in the way of my professional career, were the impetus for me actually taking the plunge.
Yeah. And so I guess... did you finish business school?
I did.
You did. So you you had this idea like when you first started business school?
I actually did the whole thing. I started it all. School? Yeah, no, I did the whole thing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So nobody from business school is working here now?
No.
So they didn't find a partner.
Yeah,
they didn't find it in me. That's for sure.
They didn't find it in you.
No, absolutely.
Well, I'm sure.
What other reasons? I mean, I know you mentioned fear. Like, what other reasons were there, or like, what were you thinking about that you were like, maybe I shouldn't start this? I heard something interesting the other day, or today actually, was that inspiration is perishable, and like that when you come up with when entrepreneurs come up with these ideas and they don't act on it right away, and then by that time, like it's too late because you talk yourself out of it essentially. So I don't know.
They're also representative of an opportunity, which is usually a moment in time. And if you don't act on it, I also think that sometimes that moment can close. I had two ideas I thought were good. One was for a wedding registry. And this is actually kind of a funny story. So Mark and I had like no money when we got married. And so I registered for gifts. I hope I can't get in trouble for this. I registered for gifts from the only place that I knew, this was 10 years ago, okay, that would let me return for cash. Because what I actually needed was cash, not a set of like charger plates, you know? Right. So I would go into Bed Bath & Beyond, which let you get cash back at that time. Good to know.
I mean, it's a bad policy. It's totally you can say it, they're just bad at doing it.
Well, you know, it was great for me. So what are you going to do? And so, but they didn't like it too much because I would show up and I'd accumulate a bunch of stuff. I'd have like a huge cart of things. I'd roll it in there and then I would do all my returns and they'd like hand me a big wad of cash. But if I went back, because I had like a lot of things. So I would have to go to different Bed Bath & Beyond locations.
Yeah, you don't want to do it all.
Totally. So I had this idea for what is now, I think, called Zola, but essentially a centralized wedding registry, which would allow you to get register for things, not at just one location, but a lot of different places, and to be able to just say straight up, hey,
I want cash.
I want cash. You know, and like I think that most people actually get that. But culturally, it's becoming more common. But
there's like crowdfunding for weddings and stuff now. I mean, there's everything.
Now it's all there, but at the time, none of those things existed, and so I was like doing my weird ghetto path to get some cash. I felt like a drug dealer. I'd go home with like just a wad of cash.
But like no blenders anymore, no plates, no forks. We didn't eat. We had a lot of cash.
Actually, Mark will tell you this. I had no TV, and we lived together, but I wouldn't let us get a TV because I didn't want to pay the cable bill. Right. And so if he wanted to go watch a sports game, we had to go to this Mexican food restaurant and we'd get chips and like order drinks because it was free, and we would watch the sports game there.
You know, I love this because it's so real, but looking back, do you appreciate that you guys did that?
Of course.
Like, would you recommend that to like young couples who like have nothing, they don't even know what they're going to do, but they know they want to get married, but they're just trying to figure their lives out still?
I think it's one of those things that for us was like incredibly bonding, especially because our lives changed so dramatically with success that it actually is weird because, like it's good weird, of course, but it makes you question who you are and what your values are because now you have different capabilities than you did before. And so having this nice foundation of knowing that what our relationship is actually based in, and where our foundation started, it feels really cool. You know? So
how'd you come up with the name Lunia?
So there's a Swedish word. So actually, the way I did it was Google has a Google Translate program.
Yeah, we use it all the time.
Everybody uses it. Yeah, it's awesome. And so I looked up words in every language that would suggest things that would relate to sleep. And
Dormir.
So there you go. But I wanted it to be a word that I could own. And
you can get the Instagram handles
I could get the handles for, all this stuff.
The domain,
So there's a word in Swedish that is basically Lunya, but it's Lugna.
Yeah.
Americans would call that Lugna.
Yeah.
But I spelled it phonetically and it means calm. And I also like that it referenced Luna, meaning moon in Spanish. And so it had this neat like multicultural heritage. And I could put it together to create a word that I thought sounded nice and was representative of the space.
Short,
and I could
2 syllables.
Short, all the things.
So how quickly from like having that realization when you're looking in the mirror, like how quickly was it until you actually started the company, and what were those early days like? Because like I don't know if you knew anything about like just clothing and manufacturing.
I knew nothing.
Yeah. So
it was
how
painful.
did you get going with that stuff?
Yeah. So the moment in the mirror happened, and probably a year later, I was like, okay, I need to do it, and that happened because of that sort of moment around the it's now or never kind of thing. And so let's say that was September. For 2 years, I toiled trying to figure out how to make clothes in fashion. I had no idea what it was. It was only me for one of those years and me plus another girl who also didn't know how to make clothes for another one of the years. And it was it started with me Googling how do you make clothes. Yeah. And then what I also say to people is it also started, I mean, for me, I run. So I'm a runner. And the way I look at running is I pick points where I'm allowing myself to walk. I'll be like at the stop sign, I can walk. And so for me, when I commit to something, that's very real for me. I don't like to fail myself. And so it was a big day when I said, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Nothing actually happened that day.
Yeah, but you made that
I
choice.
made the commitment to myself. Yeah. And once I committed to myself, which it was a long process. I tried to beat that idea up for a long time, trying to convince myself it was a bad idea. But once I was like, it's a good idea and I'm in, I was in, you know? And so then I started telling people. And what's weird is when you start putting your dreams out into the universe, I think that most people want to help you, see you succeed. And so I would like literally go, I have this idea to do this thing. And someone would be like, you should talk to so-and-so because she's in the fashion. And 50% of these meetings were a waste of time. Sometimes you'd go to a meeting and they would go, I don't know anything but talk to this person. And so I would just follow these leads until I had enough information to piece together how you sort of make a garment. And that was basically the process. And it was sort of like, it was rambling and not official. And what it got to is actually that I was manufacturing. I'm lucky to live in LA where they do small batch manufacturing. Yeah. But I was even so small that no one wanted to talk to me or deal with me. So it was at the point, and of course, remember, I didn't really know anything about making clothes. Right. So I was making cookies, trying to bribe them to finish my production because I was the smallest order. And so they kept pushing my manufacturing order behind everybody's. So it was like the craziest, weirdest process ever. And it's funny when I think about where we're at now that was like how it started. But, that was how it started.
Did that company or did that manufacturer give you what you wanted? Like, did they give you, did that vision originally that you had, did that translate into the product?
No, I'm embarrassed by my first production line, I think. And I'm so grateful to those people who bought any of that product, and then maybe even more so to those that then came back and bought again. I had a clear vision, but it's hard to execute. I mean, this is a business of quantity. If you want to do customized fabrics and really high quality construction, you need to work with the best of the best, which I do now. It's really expensive. It's really expensive. And
your unit cost is really high.
That's right. Yeah. And now, and with scale, it works out. But at that point, I was just bleeding money on these pieces that were like inferior. But you have to start somewhere.
And how many, in terms of, I know like influencers and influencer marketing became a very big thing in the last few years, but when you started back in 2012, what were you really doing to get the name out for Lunya?
Yeah, so we launched in 2014. Okay. So that was when that process started. And for me, if you go, I'm willing to put a finite amount of money into this, and I need to get to proof of concept. What I wanted to do is focus on what is the lowest hanging fruit with the best chance for ROI that we could do. Well, what's funny is influencer marketing was not it for us.
Yeah.
And so because my cost of goods was so high and the return on investment on influencers is kind of low in some respects, it's fine when your cost of goods is down. But if I'm going to send out, let's say I assume that for every good I send out, maybe I got a 30% people will post to Instagram. And then of those people that post to Instagram, how many of those actually have
1%
high converting, right? It's bad for a small business. Yeah. And also now pretend that you're selling a sleepwear product, which is not an item that people are like sharing in a selfie, And
I'm about to sleep.
That's right. Most women post their pictures when they're like all dolled up and they're looking their best, not when they're climbing into bed. So I think this is one thing I talk to people about all the time is just because a mode of marketing or a business model is popular doesn't mean it's actually the right one for your business. And for me, everyone was talking about influencers and I wanted to because I was like, man, this is sexy and everyone's doing it. But I just couldn't reconcile it. What worked for me was conversion marketing. Like Facebook and Google paid for us all day long.
Paid ads?
Yeah, paid ads. And so I basically built a whole business just focused on conversion ads and optimizing the conversion numbers. And that was how we did it. And then later, as we got bigger and the cost went down and I had a bigger team, influencers became part of that.
But did you know like early on who your target audience was going to be, or how did you figure that out?
Yeah, I did build. So I studied Lululemon's business case. They have a Harvard business case that they did, and one of the things that they talked about in that case is how they created a muse. And it was very specific. It's a marketing target. And I think her name is Ocean at Lululemon. And she's like 32. And they have very specific about all the things about her. And we did that. So we went, who's the muse? And the muse is not all the people that buy, but it's the person I'm going to speak to. And you pick it carefully because you know that like everybody on the almost no one's going to be the muse, but I need to pick a muse that appeals to people on different ends of the spectrum. Right. So we kind of identified who we thought the muse was, and we did that based on where we thought the demand was the greatest based on conversations we had with people and, all this. The cool thing about being a digital company is that you can very quickly determine if you're right. And so we had a lot of information very early on that allowed us to kind of refine our perspective.
Who was on the team besides you? Like, who were you working with?
So the first hire was this girl, Jasmine, and she was somebody I met actually through her husband, and she worked at Lululemon, and she was a store manager. And she started as my personal assistant because I couldn't define a role when you're like, you're just going to do whatever needs to be done.
Like chief of staff.
That's right.
Yeah,
like
the
literally.
chief of staff. Yeah.
That's a perfect way. That should have been her title in hindsight. And so she just worked with me. We literally shared a desk, worked off both sides of the desk and at home. And we just did whatever needed to be done. And neither of us knew what needed to be done, but we were kind of like, we're not above anything and we'll figure out what we don't know how to do. And so that was my first hire, and she was with me for quite a while. And I think the next hire was probably someone to run production, if I remember correctly, because I'm like, I need to sort out this product piece.
Going back to the target marketing thing, because I'm curious, because I know like Lululemon, when they started, if I'm not mistaken, they were like only targeting people who do yoga. Like they were posting by the yoga classes, like Lululemon, blah blah blah. But everyone sleeps. So how did you like, what was like in like besides like age and like women age this and that, like were you focused on like a particular segment of people that you were like, they're going to be the ones that are going to not just buy my product but be like the evangelists and really share it with the world?
I mean, so yes, and we had a theory about what this person, who they were and how they went about their life, but not as specifically as we are now. Now we have very clear segmentation and it's much more refined. At that point, it was sort of a general age range and sort of general interests of this person, where we might find them. And we literally based that off of when we'd talk to people, or I'd ask them like, what do you wear to bed? And they'd say, I wear these old clothes. Would you be interested in something that made you feel different? This kind of thing. Who I had the most resonance out of. This is not a scientific study at this point, And so this is the thing. This is why I think sometimes entrepreneurs are really great at running small businesses. And then you sometimes have different people that are good for running bigger businesses. But you have to be comfortable operating in a large amount of ambiguity and gray area.
You have to be scrappy.
Yeah, and like I had to be willing to pivot all the time because I often made mistakes and got it wrong. And I learned to fail very small. Right. So it's like, what's the smallest possible test I can do to try to get some direction on this?
Because it's like you think because you've seen it before, like in other cases, but that doesn't apply to yours.
That's right.
So you try that and it doesn't work. Now
That's
you have to
now do something else. Figure out what is the information I need to know to be able to get to the end of this and say, this test worked or it didn't work. And that's important actually when figuring out the test. So you make sure you're collecting the actual data you need. But also, just to add challenge to this is it's not like I was building an athletic wear company where there was an existing audience and demand built up. Right. I was going into a space and the opportunity I see and saw was that nobody bought sleepwear. So my job wasn't to sell you my sleepwear. It was to sell you the idea of wearing sleepwear at home at all.
Yeah. And so like, what was like the industry like at that time? Like, were there other companies? I'm sure there are companies that had it as part of their like line, but it wasn't like, that wasn't their focus. But how were you like, I'm going to fit in this part of the market? So
the way the industry looks and really looked even more then was you had traditional pajama sets, which are like woven, kind of I Love Lucy style, piped edge. You had sexy lingerie, kind of a la Victoria's Secret or La Perla or something like this. And then you had substitute products, so like people wearing a lot of Lululemon around the house, or you had what I call like the Generalist companies that made sleepwear as like to increase their average order value on your checkout.
Yeah.
You'd be like, I'm at J. Crew, they got a little sleep set, I'm just going to throw it in with the order and it's done. Yeah. And so those were really and excuse me, I should say one more, which is you have the holiday jammies companies, which are like the sort of pajamagrams of the world that are going to give you like exactly. And so that was kind of how I saw it. And what I realized is that my differentiation would be incredibly high quality. I mean, I say to make people feel comfortably confident, but incredibly high quality with a thoroughness to how I think about function and fit. And so that shows up in our garments in ways people don't even know. They'll look at it and they'll go, oh, this is really cute. And I'm like, great. What they don't know is that, we created special seams for it so that there's no rubbing and friction that's going to happen when you sleep. We've designed the straps so they don't twist. We have special waistbands installed that don't ride up when you wear them. We have, even now our fabrics we have thermoregulating natural fibers. I've got fabrics that increase your body's circulation. I've got fabrics that cool your body down. And they're all developed within the natural fiber family. Like this is the kind of stuff that I was like, I kind of dreamed of being able to do. But I think that we realized that we could make something that could be functional and didn't have to feel functional. It could feel amazing.
Yeah, and I'm sure this is still a challenge and will always be a challenge. But how do you... or what's your approach? Because with sleepwear, like I think you mentioned Posh earlier, it was like when people are wearing like regular clothes outside, like you don't always want to wear the same thing, and like you want to, people want to be fashionable, this and that. But with sleepwear, like how many items can you own, and like how do you get customers like continuously coming back to buy more and more product?
Once you go Lunya, you never go back.
Never go back.
And you got to sleep how many days in the year, You got to wash your clothes.
And girls have a lot of friends that they tell about.
Right.
It's a good gifting item. I think that often the way people hear about Lunya is they get it for a friend or they'll buy them a face mask or something. Right. And so I've seen that there's sort of a lot of friends bringing friends into it. And I think that, you sort of say that it's like interesting that we're sleepwear, but most people, I had a really funny story happen the other day as a girl brought one of our Pima rompers and she bought it on a Friday and she came back on Monday and was like, I need to buy another one. And we're like, okay, what happened? Well, I have to wash this one. And I've been wearing it since I bought it on Friday. So people are wearing it out of the home. And I think that that's the difference, right? It's like normally we think of sleepwear as either so embarrassing or so ugly that you'd never wear it out of the bedroom. Right. I'm designing for sleep because I'm trying to optimize for this experience. But the reality is I'm making something so comfortable that you can wear it all weekend long or all day long if you're not, especially people that work from home love it. Yeah. But that's a whole different value proposition.
Right.
In the past 5 years that you've been doing this, have you seen there be an increase in folks that are actually looking at buying this sort of stuff, like whether it's through analytics of folks that are searching for pajamas or nightwear or sleepwear, whatever it may be? Has there been an increase as apparel has become more micro in terms of, you have your yoga gear, you have your running gear, you have your, sleepover gear, you have your camping gear? Like, has there been some sort of increase that you've seen?
I mean, our company has grown roughly 5x year over year. Right. So, I don't know. Yeah, so I got to believe that we're creating awareness that is creating interest. I don't know how much of that's specific to our company versus the whole niche. Right. But I mean, we're seeing, people are loving it. We have a really high repeat purchase rate, very low return rate. So what I feel is that people are buying it and they're liking it and they're buying more. So I assume that it's it's working and it's an interest.
So you mentioned like you had hired your first hire and you were kind of working from home like together. At what point did it kind of start feeling like this is going to take off? This is going to be like a real company and I'm going to be able to hire more people? And I know that's not an indicator of what a healthy company is. I know that's a lot of people think having a lot of
bodies in the room.
is the way to go. But at one point did it start feeling like a real thing?
It's a lot of little things. So it's funny, I tell people this story, is I actually launched the business while delivering my daughter by accident. So I have 2 kids. I had my son first, and she was like 15 months after, so just from a timeline standpoint. So I was like in the bed, like
like literally the same
literally
time.
In the bed.
I'm thinking like a couple days apart.
No, it's crazy. I was like, it was horrible. I was in contractions, but then I finally got that whatever the thing is that they numb you, and so I was feeling okay at that point. Yeah. And so I was doing emails because I was like, well, Mark's asleep. Like, I'm clearly going to be in this for a while.
Right, I
like,
got nothing else to
I
do
don't
right now.
feel anything anymore.
Yeah.
So it's all fine.
Epidural.
Epidural, that's the word I was looking for.
trying to
Thank
think
you.
of that damn
I think I just blocked the whole experience out. I was like, I don't remember that whole thing that happened. But so I was on my email and I was posting a thank you to Jasmine because just for being awesome, like, and stepping in while I was like in the late stages of pregnancy and the whole thing. I was like, you're awesome, thank you. And it was on Facebook because it was back in the day.
You had to make it known.
I had to make that a public announcement, but I wanted her to feel acknowledged. We had no team to acknowledge her amongst. So anyway, it started going, and I was like, thanks for making Lunya awesome, and it linked to Lunya, and I still had the site in closed beta though, and people, I think, all thought that was meaning that I launched the business, and so they started virally resharing it. My friends did, and I was like, oh my God, it's happening. They're like sharing it. I'm not going to get them to like repeat this action because this is happening organically. So I was like, just take the closed beta, like the sign in off the page, and so we just launched the site in that moment. Now,
amazing.
what's funny is when you launch a business like that, nothing actually happens.
Right. But did you have inventory? Like,
I had inventory.
Did you
I
have
was
a
ready.
payment platform on the website?
Did I have what?
A payment platform?
Yes, I was on Shopify, and it
Okay.
was closed beta, so people had been transacting, but like my mom and like
Right,
my
you're still
friends.
testing.
I
Like,
was
you weren't
testing.
ready to fully
I wasn't
launch.
like ready for it, but I was like, you can't pass up this opportunity of like
Right.
organic sharing.
Right.
So
all
I'm
these
gonna
people
just
on my
do it.
website and they can't buy it.
That's
like,
exactly right. You're like, you don't waste that. So we just launched it. And what's funny is though, of course, I'm sure a few people went there, but nobody transacted. So people are like, when you launch, what happens? And I'm like, nothing happens. Like literally like nothing. I think I had one order. It was like such a lame, but it wasn't like there was any sort of big validation point back to your question. And so what it was is a lot of very slow growth. I did pop-ups. I like would show up at random, like at an office and like, I did a lot of like very grassrootsy type things, had a lot of events at my house, would go to other people's events, all this kind of thing. It's very organic, that process. And then what happens is I'd get some small wins and I'd be like, okay, this feels good. The process, though, of being an entrepreneur is like a roller coaster ride that I've still yet to get off.
Right.
And so it would be like I would start my day like, yeah, like I got this, we're killing it. And then I would end my day being like, what am I doing? Like, why am I making myself crazy like this? And every day I'd have to re-get my mind right. It was like a crazy process.
And to that point, I'm assuming like you might have been interested in like just clothing and stuff growing up, but it wasn't like your biggest passion.
Right.
So this was kind of an opportunity that you saw, and I know in a lot of cases, I mean, I've just kind of been doing my own like, just kind of soul searching and like research in this area of like, just kind of an entrepreneur just finding an opportunity as a business idea and going after it versus like kind of chasing something that's within the realm of like their passion and what they love to do. Because kind of going back to your point, like if you're doing that and you fail, like it's fine. Like you failed in something that you love doing. Like what else were you gonna do, right? But if things are hard when you're chasing a business opportunity and it's purely for that, then it's so easy to just be like, what am I doing? Let me just do something else.
That's right.
So like what kept you going in those times where it was like no one was buying, like you had to do all this, like did you give yourself a time frame of like if this doesn't happen by this time, then it's not the right idea?
It was more monetary. Like I was only willing to spend a certain amount of money before I started seeing money come back in. I'm actually kind of a naturally conservative person.
I was going to tell you earlier, I was like, you're definitely the conservative.
I'm much more conservative. Mark is the opposite. And I was lucky to have a Mark in my corner who was like, this is a great idea. Do it. You got it. Build the airplane while flying. And I was like, you're a crazy person. I'm not in tech. Like it's not going to blow up. I don't know what's going on. And so I had to make my own path, which was a combination of I had really great influence from him, and I had to do what felt right for me and the industry I was in. And I don't know. I will say, like, I meet a lot of people that want to start businesses, and one of the things we talk about, as you mentioned, sort of like, how do you know what you can do that makes money? But I talk about sort of three things because we invest now in a number of businesses, and I'm lucky and I get to see a lot of different plans. And I often, there's that book, Good to Great, and they talk about the Hedgehog Principle. Have you guys heard of that?
I have so many books on my list, and that's one of them that I've been meaning to read.
So frankly, there's only like two things I really liked about the book, and the Hedgehog Principle was one of them. And it's basically another, I have a thing with like overlapping circles.
Yeah, you do.
It's another overlapping circle.
Do you have any designs at Lunya with overlapping circles?
No, but now I'm thinking it's
Maybe.
like
We
my,
talk a lot
my
about
Illuminati.
we talk a lot about intersections, so it's kind of similar.
Totally.
It's super sick.
It's like all becoming clear in this moment.
There's going to be like some design coming out next month, like two circles.
Totally. And only you guys and the people listening to this this podcast are going to know what's up.
Exclusive.
Secret group.
Founder hour exclusive.
Yeah, exactly.
So basically they say, you know, and I'm butchering it, but this is the high level. You have to have something you're incredibly passionate about. And because it's going to be super hard and it's got to get you up in the morning. It's got to be something that you have a point of differentiation with. So something that you are distinctly well suited to solve in a way that somebody else can't copy or replicate. And then you have to have something that has a business model, like a plan to make money. And so it's funny that these don't sound that revolutionary, but it eliminates most deals that I see that come across my desk. And I think that it's usually not the passion problem. Most people are passionate. Usually it's either a point of differentiation. There's no, like, I look at it and go,
they're not special.
Someone else can do that.
A lot of people have great ideas, but they're not the best suited to, like, someone else that has a better, like, understanding of how to solve something. Like, we always have like tech ideas, right? Like this app or that app. Not as like simple as that, but like we've had some good ones. But it's like we're not tech people, so like if we can obviously hire someone and partner with someone and all that stuff, but it's just some things are just not technically.
Yeah, but if I'm sitting across the table from a venture capitalist or just a private investor or whatever, they're like, why should you build this?
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, I don't know. I think I had,
why
I had
are you
the
the
idea.
best person in the world to build it?
I had the idea. We found somebody to build it. It's coming around. Look at it.
But
like,
here's
that's the extent of it.
It's not that you need experience. If you were to look at Mark and to look at me, neither of us had experience.
So what is it? I mean, what is it that makes, like, what is that thing that an investor is looking for in terms of like that person can do it?
Mark and I are unrelenting, literally unrelenting. Good luck trying to make me.
But how do you show? You can't. How do you show that? I've never met you before. How do I show that?
Yeah, you don't. I don't know. I don't have the answer for it. I do think early stage you're investing in the person, and so I think there is a reason that people tend to like to invest in people they know because it's literally that, right? Like a good idea. I see a million good ideas. Yeah. The ability to make that good idea into something is like, will you not sleep until that happens? Also, like, how much of your personal identity is how sick are you, essentially? So how much of your personal identity is tied into the success of that? Because you are literally going to have to pour your soul into this, and it still might not work. And that, you know, is I don't know, for both he and I. And I think what's interesting about both of our journeys is neither of us were from the industry. We both came at it relating to the customer perspective.
Right.
He was a gamer, incredibly passionate about gaming, and I'm somebody who could relate to not feeling like I had a way to feel comfortable and confident at home. And that customer hat has served both of us incredibly well because we never lost sight of that. Our customers and guests at Lunya are the core of our experiences. And so when we're creating, you know, sometimes we make decisions that almost wouldn't make sense as a business decision, but because I know that as a customer, these are deeply meaningful things.
You know, I'm curious. A lot of business owners listen to this podcast. I think naturally, just that's what it's become. Like a lot of the people that we interview listen to it, and they get ideas from one another. And without giving away too much of, you know, any secrets or anything like that, what is like one marketing strategy or thing that you guys have done in the past or currently? It could have been like one thing that you did. It was like a one-off that you've seen work, and you were just like, "Wow, that was amazing!" Like it was perhaps something revolutionary, perhaps it wasn't revolutionary, but something that just stood out to you.
I think marketing strategy sometimes is a negative connotation. It's like how do you best connect with your customer in in a way that is like at least
that's like
conversion.
the PC way.
Yeah. I'd say when I think about marketing, and I love marketing because marketing is really human psychology, right? Resonance is the thing we talk about here. So what I say is don't do it because it's pretty on Instagram or whatever. Do it because it's going to resonate with our girl. Yeah. And I think that one thing that is absolutely true is not only do we know who our girl is, we know what our mission is and the value that we provide to her. And that's the barometer in which we use to speak to her and to know what kind of dialogues to pursue. So in marketing, we have conversations. We did a campaign called I Come First, which was basically an image of a girl sort of alluding to her masturbating. And we did a huge billboard campaign and put it all over the place. And I was scared to go live with this campaign because for obvious reasons. But I thought, it's who we've always been. This isn't a marketing stunt.
Right.
We are like a company, and the reason, the rationale behind this campaign was that I'd watched some great Netflix documentaries and read some articles about women, some challenges women are having in the bedroom. Like only 25% of women reach climax in sex, 30% of women have pain during sex, and on average it takes them 10 years to tell anyone, and only 30% of women masturbate. So I'm looking at these stats going, women have a problem in the bedroom, and like, who is better to have this conversation with them than me, right?
Yeah.
And then Lunya. And so I was scared of it, but then I was like, but my motivations are pure. Like at the end of the day, we're a company that's always stood for making women feel comfortable and confident. That's not a campaign. That's who we are. And if you follow our company since inception, in small ways, we've always done things in that vein. And so for me, I think understanding deeply who you are and then being unafraid to step into that, I think is for us has been the thing that has built loyalty and a strong customer relationship.
I love that. Kind of going back to my question about like that moment, was there a moment where it kind of like, it was like the tipping point, if you will, or was it kind of just like a slow, gradual increase in terms of like whatever sales?
I would say it was a slow, gradual increase, but there have been inflection moments where I go, oh my God, this is not going to be a successful company. This is going to be a holy cow company, where I have those sorts of moments. I do believe this will be $1 billion business. And I think that that's important because when I talk to you about that mission of having, we need to point to women running successful businesses. We need to be more than a lot of women starting businesses. We need to be able to demonstrate success in them. And so to me, it has to work in that way. It doesn't have to be $1 billion business, but I think there's no reason it shouldn't be. Lululemon's like an $18 billion business. So you're like, honestly, everyone sleeps and not everyone works out.
Yeah, I think there's a big divide in apparel, especially where it's like, there's fashion in general, where like there's like certain companies that are really big, and then there's a lot of companies that are really small and like not that many in the middle.
That's right. Yeah. I see that too.
It's a reverse bell curve, if you will.
I see that. And I think that's one of the things we think about a lot here is like, we're going to build towards what we think this company should be.
Yeah.
And super scary, not going to lie.
Do you see yourself doing Lunia for the rest of your life?
No. I think, it's funny. As a leader, one thing I really struggle with is people. I care a lot about my people, but I also am trying to be a leader that's like not too emotional and is can be professional this way. And so I feel a lot of like complication around people leadership. This is something my husband is just very innately good at this. I'm very learned at this, and I think that lately I've had to come to grips with this idea that hopefully a lot of people will scale with the company, and you try to build this company that encourages people to scale with it, that provides resources to help them scale, feedback, learning, all this kind of thing. But not everybody is the right person forever at the company. But each person has something valuable that they can contribute, and it might be that they're the right person for the time. I am the right person to run this company for this time. I told you, I'm a creative challenge person. That's a really great ikigai central factor for where this company's at.
But once you feel like you're not creatively challenged anymore, now it's just pure business numbers.
Well, and it should be someone that what is it the center for them is what the company needs most. I think I will still be able to add value. I think founders bring soul and help people stay close to mission. And I think that I'm still going to be involved. I have no desire to walk away. This is my baby, but I also just running it day to day.
You're aware of that day might come.
It's a real thing. No, it's like I'm planning for it.
Yeah.
And I'm building, I'm making relationships and trying to build succession planning around myself, not because I want to bounce, but because I don't want this company to be capped at my growth. Yeah. You know?
You want it to be bigger than you.
Yeah. And I want to do the thing that I'm best at. I'm really good at creative stuff. I'm good at, not like creative, like painting a picture. I'm good at like creative strategy and, these kinds of things. That's, if you want to make me into a weapon, that's the place you're going to deploy me, And so I think I have to be real self-aware about what I'm really good at, try to focus myself in that way so I don't get in the way of Lunya's growth.
I know you mentioned you don't have a lot of time outside of just like working and family and all that
Yes.
stuff, but what do you do when you have the time?
Really my life is very much like home with the kids and working.
Yeah.
When I do have free time, which is like pretty few and far between.
20 minutes.
Yeah, like a little bit. So on my birthday, I take my birthday off.
When's your birthday?
February 1st. I didn't used to take it off, but I realized as I'm getting older, it's like kind of like a weird, like complicated day for me. Yeah, it's like, so it's a holiday. That's the deal. Yeah. I went to an art gallery, which was super fun.
Which one?
I went to, what's the one that starts with a G?
Getty?
Gagwan or
Gagosian.
Gagosian. Thank you. Yeah. You got it.
He's one of our people.
Really?
We're Armenian, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, it was a cool gallery. I went to like a bunch. I went to some small ones in Venice. But just,
there's one in Beverly Hills, I believe.
Yeah, that's the one I went to. Yeah. The frivolousness of just having an unscheduled day is like heaven. Mark and I we do cycling trips. Nice. And we did one in Italy and we did it in France. And it's basically 3 days where you've got like a GPS and they deliver my luggage to the hotel I'm supposed to end up that night. And we have no agenda. We stop and have wine. We're like semi-buzzed biking. Yeah. We like stop in these weird little like funny things. That the freedom of that, like if I have my dream days, it's always about just like freedom.
Yeah, you know? Not having a schedule.
Those are pretty few and far between though.
It's amazing. Well, this has been a fantastic conversation.
So fun. Thank you guys.
Yeah, I think I was literally the whole time I was thinking this is probably one of my favorite episodes.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I usually say that off air. But now I'm saying it on air.
I think, Mark, we're going to beat you.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to give him a run for his money.
I think you might. I think Mark's going to be in the top 6.
You can bet that this is going to become a marketing initiative at Lunya, though, and we're going to be like, look, this is serious.
Hashtag beat puppy.
You know what's cool about Mark is he would love that.
Yeah,
You know, he's like, he is a huge supporter of mine, and he's been someone in my corner the whole way, so he'd love it.
And I think I'm not the best suited person to say this, but I think that one thing that really you said, and I think that should be heard more, is that I think women are probably better founders than males. I think that from what I've learned from this podcast and from what I've seen, I think you guys are much more organized. You're emotional, but also logical. So men don't tend to have a lot of that emotion. Again, I'm generalizing. I'm very heavy generalizing right here. But I think that what is lacking in society in general are more vocal female founders who are successful. Right. I think a lot of times because there's so much going on in your lives, you don't have time to talk about it.
Sure.
You're not as out there in terms of like doing podcasts and interviews and going on TV and all that stuff, going on social media. I think, and I'm not saying men aren't busy, but because we're not the primary caretakers of kids, we get to do a lot more of that stuff. But I think that to change that narrative, I think women need to be more vocal. I think they need to be like, I think we struggled there early on, like to get female founders on our podcast.
Really?
And it was because like,
even though like we were focused on that.
Yeah.
We were like getting more.
It wasn't a thing. We were just
Sorry,
like,
guys, I'm not.
No. Right now. It was like, it was like, hey, we would love to be on it, but we're busy. We have our kids, and we're like, yeah, we totally get it.
I mean, you saw how long it took us to schedule.
No, totally.
Also, when it comes to like just running the company, like you said, like you're trying to build $1 billion company,
right?
And so you're so focused. You're so much more focused, I think, than someone who who may not be as focused, like because they have more time to do other things.
This is one of those things that we've had to work through even in our relationship. At this point, as my company's needs have grown, Mark's had to be a real big support at home, and I'm really lucky that we are so supportive of each other, because it's like the reality is you can't be CEO at home and be running a big it's like it's just not
If you had to give one final advice on for folks that do want to have that relationship where both individuals in that relationship are working, what would it be?
I would say choose somebody that really wants you to be the best version of yourself. They're really just focused on you, and then you hopefully are selfless enough to be focused on them. There's sort of a necessary selflessness in a relationship that's going to demand so many trade-offs. A lot of sacrifice in our lives. We don't get to do all the fun things we want to do. But I would say my success, because it was important to me, was always very important to Mark, and vice versa. And I think that fundamental understanding very early on has really enabled me to be a successful career person.
Awesome. Well, we're so excited to see where things go from here, and all the best to you and Lunya, and we're excited to see you on the Forbes Top 100.
Thanks so much. Thanks for your time, guys.
Thank you.